There are genres that just couldn't stand the test of time. I mean, they still exist, but it feels like their best days are forever gone. The fanbase has lost interest, labels barely release this kind of music anymore, and the media keeps pretending it doesn't exist. But there are still fans who dig these genres and refuse to believe they'll ever disappear from the musical map. So today I'm going to discuss 5 genres that used to be pretty big, but then people just stopped listening to them, or they simply reached their peak and nothing new could really be added.
Let's give some room one more time to the music our ancestors were hyping up. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, share, and watch this video until the end. I'm sure you'll have something to add or argue about. Let's start.
And the first one is post-rock. What was that? I mean, if it was supposed to replace all those outdated bands from the 70s, 80s and 90s, then it definitely didn't. Like, completely didn't. Because literally every rock genre feels healthy nowadays, and we regularly experience echoes of the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s through modern bands that take inspiration from the past. But post-rock? It just seems forever gone. At least the post-rock tag does. Some people say that Tok Tok invented post-rock back in the 1980s with their album Spirit of Eden. This English band, of course, has almost nothing to do with the regular post-rock formula we, the people of the 21st century, know. But some journalists decided that this was where the story should begin. So, okay.
Actually, that's how genres often work. Musicians make music first, and only later do journalists, critics and fans invent labels to explain what just happened.
It's commonly said that the term post-rock was coined by journalist Simon Reynolds when he described the album Hex by the British band Bark Psychosis. As journalists put it, they used rock instrumentation for non-rock purposes. But electric guitar, bass and drums had already been used for decades in many genres, including folk, reggae and plenty of others. Maybe it isn't the right angle to look at post-rock. Anyway, it wasn't Tok Tok or Bark Psychosis that started all the hype around post-rock. This particular sound was developed by bands such as Godspeed You, Black Emperor, Partly Slinned, Sigur Rós, Mogwai, Explosions in the Sky, 65 Days of Static, This Will Destroy You and others.
For me, when I was a high school student, post-rock was a sort of alternative to metalcore, emo or pop-punk.
It was a great time to discover all these bands one by one and dive deep into a sea of sadness filled with beautiful guitar melodies. To put it shortly, for me post-rock is embodied by 3 legendary tracks: Kids Will Be Skeletons by Mogwai, The World Is Our by This Will Destroy You, and Sveffen Engler by Sigur Rós. By the end of the 2000s, it was obvious that post-rock was dying because of a lack of new ideas and endless imitation of classic acts. It simply had nothing new to offer except long tracks and complicated arrangements. Post-rock is still alive, but fewer and fewer people talk about it, and we haven't seen a truly refreshing album in years, except maybe the ones recorded by the classic bands themselves. If you're a true trip-hop artist, you are born in England in the second half of the 20th century, you have a band with a female vocalist, and you use old dusty jazz samples. And it's even better if you are from Bristol, because the Bristol sound is everything. I'm not quite sure citizens of any other British, European, American or Asian city can form a real trip-hop band.
Like a real one, not a fake one.
Basically, the style emerged as a variation of breakbeat from the Bristol sound scene of the late 1980s and early 1990s, incorporating influences from jazz, soul, funk, dub, rap and movie soundtrack sampling. And some scratches, yeah.
How can it feel this wrong?
there are only a few truly classic trip-hop acts. Portishead, Massive Attack, Tricky, who actually collaborated with Massive Attack, and DJ Shadow. That's it. When Portishead released Dummy and Massive Attack dropped Mezzanine, it felt like a major musical evolution. It seemed as if electronic music, hip-hop and jazz had finally met and started something completely new. And what came next? Tons of artists started using those standard trip-hop dusty beats, scratches, and the so-called jazzy sound. Madonna, Björk, Gorillaz, Radiohead. So trip-hop went pop? Not exactly, but it sort of became just another card in a producer's deck. There are some modern bands with trip-hop influences, but I honestly can't name a single contemporary act that feels like a true trip-hop band in the classic sense.
So that's what happened to trip-hop, but we still love it.
Teenagers in skinny jeans and torn tights, piercings, baggy t-shirts, occult symbols, cemetery photos, stories about terrible abuse within bands.
What else? Oh yeah, there were at least 3 genuine witch house bands: Salem, White Ring, and Crystal Castles.
Though the last one was much more inventive and constantly experimented with other genres. It all started with occult and gothic-inspired internet aesthetics back when the internet was free of AI, the chopped and screwed Houston hip-hop scene, drone and ambient textures, and the atmosphere of Midwestern and Southern decay. And teenagers fell for it. It clicked with a lot of young people living difficult lives in crappy neighborhoods. Witch House embodied that moment of transition from the so-called optimistic hipster era to our modern world of twisted eclectic culture and self-irony. Like many internet-born genres, it appeared almost overnight, developed its own visual language, attracted a devoted cult following, and burned through its ideas just as quickly. Witch House ran out of fresh ideas fast, but it paved the way for hyperpop, funk, and rage rap. New Rave was so small that it could be compared to some tiny one-room cocktail bar hidden away in Osaka. But somehow it happened. Britain suddenly decided that colorful tights, fluorescent clothing, and dance floor chaos were legal again. Girls rediscovered how stylish their grandmothers looked in the 1960s, while the boys just wanted some good old rock and roll fun mixed with electronic dance music.
Do you remember Klaxons?
They made a huge breakthrough with their debut album Myths of the Near Future in 2007, and now almost nobody cares about them at all. At least the Dare is trying to resurrect some of that energy. Nowadays we call New Rave a microgenre, but back then the media kept presenting it as a massive cultural movement, a new rave boom, and even the future of rock music. As often happens, the genre's reputation became bigger than the genre itself. The funny thing is that rave never died in the first place. It was always alive. It just had very little to do with indie rock. Just go to a good techno party and you'll see what I mean. And besides Klaxons, there was the brilliant British band New Young Pony Club, who were also described as dance punk and electropop. I absolutely love them. They recorded a couple of fantastic albums and, on their 2010 record The Optimist, maybe became a little too sad for a genre that was supposed to be about neon colors and dancing all night. That felt like the end of the era. There was simply no room left for new rave. So now all we can do is perform some awkward dances to Atlantis to Interzone and shake our heads to Ice Cream by New Young Pony Club. Grunge was rock music's final big battle against electronic music and hip-hop, and for a brief moment it actually won. But that happened more than 30 years ago.
Let's be honest, it's hard to call any modern band truly grunge, because the label is permanently attached to a particular era, and that era is the 1990s.
Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam, these are the 4 key bands of the genre. What they did was combine the heaviness of metal with the energy and attitude of punk. Grunge also became a kind of white America's response to the rise of rave culture, electronic music, and hip-hop. Whether that was intentional or not, the timing was perfect. The genre is closely associated with the tragic story of Kurt Cobain, the famous grunge fashion style, MTV culture, and the image of the alternative kid who skates and dates alternative girls. After Cobain's death, grunge began its decline. But of course, it wouldn't have lasted forever anyway. Times were changing, labels changed their priorities, audiences grew tired of bands that looked and sounded increasingly similar. It became obvious that it was time to say goodbye to grunge. So, these are 5 music genres that didn't last all that long and have now mostly become history. I don't mean that post-rock, grunge, or trip-hop no longer exist. They do. They've simply become reference points rather than living movements. Today they are mostly used as descriptive tags. A band sounds a bit grungy, another one borrows something from trip-hop, someone adds a post-rock guitar. That sort of thing. The funny thing is that genres rarely disappear completely. Once music journalists invent a label, the term tends to survive long after the scene itself is gone.
Which genres would you add to the list? Thanks for watching, follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and see you soon!